So thank you for coming along. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to this webinar hosted by H&H Group. I will just introduce myself because I would expect most of you are expecting Barbara Huddart to be here as the chair for tonight. Barbara is our PR consultant to the H&H Group and the owner of the Glendale Marketing Company. Unfortunately, Barbara fell at the weekend and broke her arm, so is unable to join us tonight, although I am told she's lurking somewhere on the screen. But yeah, so wish Barbara a very speedy recovery. So I'm Margaret Irving. I'm the company secretary and personnel manager at H&H Group. And I was drafted in at the very 11th hour to do this. So I will ask for your patience, bear with me, and I'll do my best. I guess by registering for tonight's event, you kind of know what's in store for you, but just to give you a rundown of the format for the evening, we've got 4 speakers who are all pioneering leaders with a wealth of knowledge in their own fields, and they'll be presenting on a variety of topics, but all with a theme with a link to our theme for the evening, which is planning for today and the future. Each speaker has been allocated sort of 10 to 15 minutes for their presentation. And what we would like to do is to keep any questions that you may have, which I'm sure you will have, until the end of the 4 presentations. But what you can do throughout the presentations is to type in your questions into the question and answers button at the bottom of your screen. If you put your mouse onto the bottom of the screen, you'll see a Q&A tab. If you type your questions into there, we'll collate them all and we'll deal with them all at the end of the 4 presentations. So if you could avoid using the chat button, because that comes up to everyone, the Q&A one is just visible to our panelists. So hopefully that makes sense. So as you know, today is International Women's Day, and there are events, seminars, webinars, all sorts of things happening right across the globe, and many events happening here in the UK. It is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women. I'm sure you have all had, and I know I definitely have had, some very strong women in my life who've both inspired me and probably terrified me at times, but they've also managed to pass on some incredible knowledge, and that then enables the strong, inspirational women we have around now to plan for today and for the future. As a business, H&H wanted to be part of today's events by providing an opportunity for some of our pioneering women to speak about subjects that are pivotal to the future challenges in the agricultural sector. So on that note, I will introduce our first speaker, and today's first speaker is Lynne Malinson, who is a business growth consultant in the food and drink business, as well as being one of our own non-executive directors here at H&H. She also lives and works on a dairy and sheep farm near Penrith. Lynne started out in banking and at 22 was the youngest female bank manager in the country. She then went to set up and run her own business, multi-award winning business, Country Puddings. I can personally vouch for the quality of Lynne's baking. Excellent. So based on her own experience, Lynne's going to talk to us tonight about the opportunities within farm diversification. So I will welcome Lynne and hand over to her for our first presentation.
Thank you, Margaret. So with regards to opportunities within farm diversification, what do we mean by farm diversification? I would summarise it as new revenue streams in addition to your usual farming enterprises. So not your typical dairy, beef and sheep or cereals and arable farming. And there is a whole plethora of different kinds of farm diversification out there. In 2018 and 19, farm diversification accounted for £740 million worth of revenue to agricultural businesses out there. which is a significant amount of additional money that could make huge differences to your businesses. And so when we've been looking at different types of farm diversification, we have been looking at, we've categorized them into the different kinds. So for example, we've got accommodation, which can include bed and breakfast, self-catering accommodation, wigwams, yurts, shepherd's huts, camping and caravan parks. And I understand from a recent webinar that I've attended that this year there is a relaxation of the rules with regards to planning permission for campsites, and that I understand that you can have up to 56 days of campsite availability on your farm without requiring planning permission. So that's an opportunity that a lot of people are considering this year with the staycations and the COVID. There are also food and drink opportunities within diversification. You can look at breweries and distilleries with regards to the recent popularity of distilling gins, etc. The microbreweries. You've then got butchery, that could be your own farm produce, bakery, preserving, horticulture, which could be selling your own fruit, vegetables, plants, cut flowers. And then you've got farm shops. Now that could just be a small part of your business, selling from a small area of your farm, your own produce, or it could be the full-scale farm shop experience that has become very popular in the last 10, 20 years. Then we have pets, and there's all kinds of different opportunities with pets. Everybody likes to go on holiday with their dog, so there's accommodation opportunities for catteries, kennels, stabling. There's pet agility, there's bedding, training, pet food. But the number one farm diversification at the moment is experiences. That can include all kinds of things, from a day in the life of the farmer, or half a day in the life of the farmer if you don't want to spend a full day with somebody else, lambing help, butchery and charcuterie, planting trees and hedgerows, farm tours, cookery schools, off-road driving experiences. And there's a very on-trend thing at the moment where you can rent a boat on Zoom meetings for £5 a time. There's a business out there doing this, and I read just recently that has created £50,000 worth of revenue for them in the last 12 months. So that's a great revenue stream for very little financial outlay. So there's all kinds of different opportunities there, of all kinds of different sectors within farm diversification. But what I'd like to share with you is some of my own farm diversification journey. Now, it's been a long journey and I don't have time to share it all, so I'll try and summarize the key points and explain that to you. My farm diversification experience started when our children were both preschool age, they were still at home, and I wanted to create an additional revenue stream and work from home so that we could enjoy providing a childhood for them that was very traditional and rural, the type of childhood that both myself and my husband David had enjoyed. And it was a chance remark from him one supper time that he just said, "You make a great sticky toffee pudding, you should just sell it." Well, my first reaction to that was, you can't possibly just start making food and selling it. There must be a whole lot of rules and regulations and things to satisfy to be able to do that. And he said, "Yeah, there will be, but I'm sure you can do it." He's always given me a can-do belief in myself. And so looked into it. Sure enough, we could start selling our sticky toffee pudding. We'd contacted trading standards, environmental health. I've done my basic food hygiene course. We had all of the boxes ticked to go. And so being a farmer's wife, my first thinking of an outlet to sell these puddings was farmers markets. That was the logical place for me to sell those. And I was turned down. I approached Made in Cumbria, who were the main organisers of the farmers markets, and they said, "I'm sorry, Lynn, but you're classed as a home baker, and we need the right mix of traders at the farmers markets. So you'll have to go on the waiting list until one of the other home bakers gives up their slot." So that was a bit disappointing. I'd been knocked back before I'd even started. And so it was back to the drawing board. You know, how could I make puddings? Where could I sell them at? You know, what were the opportunities out there? And I have a broken tractor radio to thank for the real start of the journey, to be honest. Key part of a farmer's equipment is a radio in the tractor, and ours was broken. And so we would go to the local breaker's yard in the Penrith area to acquire a replacement radio. And en route, we were having a bit of a drive around that day and completing some jobs. We happened to chance upon a farm shop that was just newly opened on the outskirts of Penrith. And so we stopped and called in, and there was an advert on the side of the road, and it said, homegrown potatoes and carrots. Oh, that's fine. So we went in, and we soon realised it wasn't just carrots and potatoes. There was a whole table full of fresh hen duck eggs. There was a table full of home baking, cakes and biscuits. There was a beautiful display of fresh fruit and vegetables, all of their own bags of potatoes and carrots. There was a fridge full of pies and bacon and sausages and other meat products. And in the freezer was just some ice cream. There was no puddings to be found. And so when I had a chat with the owners, Neil and Jean, and said, you don't have any puddings. Is that something that you would consider? And Neil said, you know, there's nobody around the Elas that does them. And so when I explained that it was something I'd wanted to do and I'd been knocked back from the farmers market, he went, well, give me some samples and we'll take it from there. So we then acquired the tractor radio, went home, David was set to on the radio, and I put the cooker on to make some samples for Neil. And that was my very first customer. I took the samples round. He placed the order without tasting them. He just had confidence that they would be okay. And from that point, the phone started ringing. We were just supplying that local farm shop, but within 2-3 weeks, we'd had phone calls from other outlets. One was a deli and one was a visitor attraction called Reged. And they were great places to then have other people approach us to supply different farm shops and delis throughout the UK. And so that's what we did. We were a very reactionary business. Although we'd had this plan at the beginning, we didn't have a business plan. We didn't have a target as to turnover or amount of puddings we wanted to make. And so the phone just kept ringing. We just kept making more and more. And it was apparent that this little domestic cookery in our kitchen was not going to cope with the volume of sticky toffee pudding that it was having to make. And so we decided to invest in a bigger cooker so that we could make more puddings. So instead of 12 small puddings every half hour, this would do 36 or 48 small puddings every half hour. And the day we ordered that big cooker was the day foot and mouth struck. And it sent us into a bit of a dilemma, thinking, what have we done? We've just committed to a brand new cooker to get the business going. And we just thought the business was going to stop before it really got going and really got some legs. But we managed to survive through foot and mouth. And after foot and mouth, we decided that we would convert a barn on the family farm into a pudding kitchen. Things were really progressing. They were going great guns. And we converted the barn on the family farm in 2002 and outgrew it in 5 years. We continued to grow. We started recruiting staff. We were shipping puddings out through courier services in polystyrene boxes packed with ice. And we were supplying shops as far north as Inverness and as far south as London in a very short time scale. But after 5 years in that pudding kitchen, we were bursting at the seams. That pudding kitchen could not cope with the volumes we were having to make. And we were approached by a large hotel group to make their range of desserts. And it meant that we took a leap of faith and we moved the business again and took on an industrial unit on a business park. We had walk-in cookers. It got to pallets in and pallets out of stuff, walk-in fridges, walk-in freezers. I never in my dreams thought I would have a skill of driving a forklift truck and having a forklift truck license. That had never even registered in the very beginning of when we started our journey. But over the years, we grew to supply most of the leading independent retailers in this country, the award-winning farm shops, the Kew Guild butchers, delis, garden centres, and some of the smaller grocery multiples like Ocado and Booths. And we also got the opportunity to export our puddings, and it gave us great satisfaction to export to Australia, Singapore, Dubai, Malta, and a weekly consignment of custard to Ireland. We achieved 12 Great Taste Awards over the years, and a Great Taste Award is a bit like a food Oscar, where your products are blind judged. It's not on the packaging, it's entirely on the quality of the product, on the taste and the flavour and the texture and the consistency. So that was great recognition for all of the hard work and development that we've put in over the years. But one of the highest accolades that we had was receiving an invitation to go and present our range of puddings to the ministers in the House of Commons in 2015. And that was then finished off with a champagne reception at 11 Downing Street. That was a real surreal moment. And another great achievement that we got was supplying the Queen through the Royal Farm shops at Windsor. Now, when you credit check all your customers so you can give them 30 days credit on wholesale orders, that's one customer that you're never going to credit check, and you know that they're good for credit. And the regular orders we got from Her Majesty's staff, that was, yeah, a real great moment. And yeah, so that's just a very condensed journey of country puddings. And also the different opportunities within farm diversification for you. Welcome any questions, and thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Lynne. I'm sure you'll agree there were quite a number of issues raised then in relation to all sorts of topics, B&Bs, dogs, pets, experiences, and really just, I suppose, giving an inkling of the opportunities that are out there for people. As Lynne referred to, there are always opportunities out there within farm diversification, and it's just really finding the one that works for you. And someone that has done exactly that is our second speaker. And for that, we travel 300 miles, I'd guess, something like that, south of Carlisle down to Hampshire. And that's where Emma Boyles runs the Grey Sheep Company. Just to give a little bit of background, Emma and her husband took on a derelict farmhouse on 310 acres back in 2004 and became first generation farmers. And I think that's quite a rare thing in today's farming industry, quite challenging. And Emma has since gone on to introduce sheep to the landscape. Emma has a love of textiles and now produces exceptional knitting yarns, and her business has received Rural Business Awards as an outstanding diversification project. The company now distributes to stockists in the USA and Japan. And the title of Emma's presentation is Finding a Niche and Making It Work. So I will welcome Emma to this evening's event and hand over to her for our second presentation.
Just doing the technology bit here. There we go. So, hi, I'm Emma Boyles, and I'm the founder of the Grey Sheep Company in Hampshire. We, as you heard, were new entrants to farming. We bought a farm in 2004 when we had 3 little girls. And it was really very, very derelict and tumbling down, probably more so than we actually realised at the time. We have about 310 acres here, 70 acres of that is ancient woodland. It used to be a dairy farm, and then when they went out of dairy, it just was taken over by the contractors and intensively farmed on a wheat rape rotation, with just the odd field beans every now and then. So the fields were really poor, and most of the infrastructure of the farm hadn't been updated for many, many years. As you can probably see, this was our state-of-the-art barn at the time. So when we came to the farm, we thought that we would need to just leave the status quo. We I grew up in Pembrokeshire, so in the countryside, so I was sort of quite used to the countryside, but knew nothing about farming. And after about 5 years, we realised that the arable just wasn't, by the time we'd done a profit share with the contractor, the return was minimal. So we needed to do something. So we started looking at what the options were. I've always been a keen knitter and into textiles. And also I had a real determination to make this farm work. As I say, growing up in Pembrokeshire, we were surrounded by small dairy farms, small farms, and it just seemed wrong to just hand it over to somebody else to farm the arable. Looking at the options that sort of supported my interests, I did a lot of research, and actually the knitting industry is a multi-million-pound market in the UK alone. I mean, in Germany, they spend 300 million just on knitting patterns a year. So although our neighbours, who are all quite large arable farmers, sort of used to snigger behind their hand about the fact that we were talking about farming for fibre, it seemed a bit of a joke locally. When you actually look at it, that there, a study done by the Craft Council, there was 31.6 million craft buyers in the UK in 2020 alone, and spending £3 billion. So you can see that this sort of whole craft and the resurgence of craft, it's a huge, huge market. And most of the knitting yarn is supplied from Australian, New Zealand, or South American wool. So we felt that with the rise in social responsibility and the customer awareness now, I think mainly driven by the food market, that we've become much, much more aware of where our food is coming from. Discerning knitters and makers are becoming much more aware of where their base products are coming from. And the time taken in knitting, for example, a sweater, is the same whether you buy a cheap yarn or a slightly more expensive yarn. But then when people comment on your garment, you have a story to tell if it's a British yarn or something special. But we knew that we couldn't go up against the big boys. We had to find our own niche and do things slightly differently. So we started looking for a fine wool flock, which, to be honest, in my naivety, I just sort of typed in, Merinos for sale UK, and was surprised when there was no returns on that. We eventually decided that we would go for Gotland sheep as our starter flock. Gotland is a small island off the east coast of Sweden, and they are a leggy, more mountain sheep, but they have 3 products. They have a very highly sought after fibre, which is a silver corkscrew luster yarn, almost like a mohair. They have fur skins, which the Swedish call fur skins, which we call sheepskins, and also they're very, very lean meat. So for us, it made sense. Our first production run of knitting yarn was in 2010, and we sent 20 kilos of our very carefully sought fleece off to the spinners, and you lose about 50% of the weight of the fleece in the production. So we got about 10 kilos back, which equates to about 100 skeins. So you can imagine we were very small. Each year we've grown through selling out and then reinvesting that money. And about 7 years ago, we wanted to improve the quality of our fibre. And we looked around for some merinos to introduce some fine, to get a finer micron fibre. And we ended up getting some from the south of France, which was in itself, it was just incredibly difficult. It took me about 18 months to go through all the logistics of bringing these sheep back. And we managed to do it just before the whole country was shut down with blue tongue. So we brought back 2 superfine merino rams, about 15 microns, and we crossbred those with our Gotlands, and we established our own breed, which is Stein Fine Wool, which we registered the trademark. The crossing of the breeds gave us a very fine wool, about 19 micron, which is probably the finest of British breeds, and it is a high luster. So luster is the shine on the wool, and it also makes the wool have a really nice, we would call it a handle, but a feel. So it's really soft, and it also makes it slightly drapey when you're knitting with it. So now we had a unique product that we only had the only flock of Stein Fine Wool, and a unique story in that we were trying to bring the farm back to life, to being a really sort of a proper business, and also putting back what we've earned from our sales back into hedgerows, back into the planting, caring for our chalk downlands. So we had quite a unique story as well. We have not thrown money at this big time until we had this barn, which is not lovely. It was very much an organic growth. And the main route to market was through wool shows, which initially was in the UK. So we had a minimal website, a couple of pages, but we would go out to the wool shows, meet people, tell them what we were doing. And 10 years ago, people just did not get any connection with the wool on the stand with farming. There was just a huge disconnect that we were actually producing this yarn and bringing it to them. Then about 5 years ago, we went to our first international show, which we went to Hamburg, and we were stunned by the response that we got. And from then on, we've been doing a lot of European shows, Denmark, Barcelona, France, Germany, Austria, and also the last couple of years we've been going to Switzerland. No, going to these shows doesn't necessarily mean huge gains financially, although they do bring in cash, but what it does is where we have a unique product, it actually takes us to those people and they can feel it, touch it, meet us. And then what we find is that there's a huge rise from those countries in orders online, because now they know us, they've seen the colour, they can feel the quality, and they get the confidence then to order. Last year was a bit of a disaster, because we went and did our first US exhibition, although it was cancelled 3 days before, although we were there and the product was there. The only saving grace was that my sister lives in the States, so she was able to keep the product there and sell and promote our product in the US as well. Otherwise, I think I just would have sat and cried and drunk a bottle of gin. Our other key now, and especially with that has really come to the fore, is our website. We use a Shopify platform, which is an e-commerce platform, and it's been fabulous for us, and it's made a huge difference. Previously, we had quite a simplistic website, and every time I needed to make a change, I had to ask a technician, which one was a cost, and also nothing really sat together. Shopify is a great platform with lots of different plugins and apps, so that you can get lots of analytics and understand where your customers are based. So I can see how many abandoned carts there are, how many customers from the States, and it even gives you a live view. So that has been a really big plus for us. Most of my marketing is done through Instagram. We have quite an active following on Instagram. I try and post regularly, and not just pushing product, but very much about the story. We follow the lambing, the hedge laying, what we're doing on the farm. We're just about to plant some ancient wheat, so we'll follow that story, and really trying to tie the farm into the yarn, so people realise that they're actually helping to impact and improve the farm and the landscape, as well as buying a yarn which has got a story to it. We've also got retail outlets, and at the minute we don't do a huge amount of retail because we don't give huge margin, but we have shops in China, Japan, Germany, Alaska, because my sister lives in Alaska, so that helps, and the US. So that is another area that we're looking to expand on. But the reason these shops take our yarn is because of the story, and because it can't be got from anywhere else. So it helps draw people into their shops. Again, the marketing has been really very self-driven. We started off, I started off approaching sort of the magazines, Country Living, House and Gardens, sort of making a story about getting a farm, what we were doing. And it seemed that people really liked to put that across in the magazines. From the magazines, we then got approached by BBC Two to do Back to the Land by Kate Humble, which was absolutely fantastic. One, for sales, but also the residual knock-on of followers on Instagram and coming to the farm has been brilliant from that. And Country File and Farmers Country Showdown we've done as well. And both Farmers Country Showdown and Country File came from us applying for the Farmers Weekly Awards, which was absolutely fantastic. The evening, the actual awards was amazing, but the Farmers Country Showdown follow the 3 finalists in the diversification. So we had 4 days of filming on the farm, which was a little bit stressful at times, I have to say. But again, that feeds back in to getting our name out there. And one of the things I found, that if you're on the BBC or if you're on one of these Country File or, you know, Back to the Land, it gives a validity to your business. It suddenly takes you from being just somebody to, you're obviously a proper business if you're on the TV. So that really helped. And again, winning the Rural Business Awards for Outstanding Diversification. And it's really nice as well, because it's real validation for all the work that we've put in. My partner in crime with the business is Susie Parish, who is our shepherdess, and she's the only female shearing instructor for British Wool. And I tend to look after all the business side and all the colours and all the strategy, and she's looked after the flock. So without combining her farming knowledge and my business knowledge, I don't think we would have achieved what we have. Our future plans, I don't know whether you can see behind me all this sort of great big space, but we have just taken receipt of a small spinning mill. Luckily, it got in before Brexit in December. So we're now starting to spin our own fibre on the farm. And that's, again, trying to increase the story. It gives us more control of our product. It gives us end-to-end control of the product. And we are opening an on-site shop, and hopefully then we'll be able to draw people in who are not just into knitting, but are into understanding how fibre gets prepared, and again, really trying to tie it in with the farming and help people understand that, you know, we can make fabulous products here in Britain. You don't have to buy British just because it's British, but buying British because it's sort of top quality. We will continue doing our European festivals. One, because it's a good way for me to get a couple of days away from the office, but also it's about 50% of our products go abroad. So it's really important that some, by hook or by crook, I find a way of getting over the channel. And the US market is huge. So again, we're looking to continue our expansion into the US. Our main focus will continue always to be on quality, not quantity. We're a small farm. We're never ever going to be, you know, sort of a couple of thousand flock and mass producers, but we're looking to really offer a premium product to a discerning knitter who really is interested in where their products are coming from and connects with our farming story, rather than just seeing it as a sort of a throwaway product, which obviously a lot of clothing is these days. So thank you for listening and look forward to having any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Emma. As I've had a newly renewed passion for knitting during lockdown, so I found that absolutely fascinating, which I guess a lot of people may have done as well during lockdown, I'm not sure. So any questions, as we said before, if you could put them into the Q&A, and that's for Lynne or Emma so far, or just generally any questions into the Q&A, and we will deal with them after the 4 presentations. So as I mentioned in Emma's introduction, she's a first generation farmer, and that's quite rare in the farming industry because most farms get passed down from generation to generation. And the importance of succession planning, which is the title of our next presentation, and it's all about having those important but sometimes difficult conversations about the next steps. Heather Wildman has had over 26 years of working with farmers and industry and offers a service through her company Saviour Associates to help clients achieve their objectives, and that's through developing clear vision, business plans and identifying gaps in the market. With farming about to undergo major changes, planning for the future has never been more important. Heather was born on a Lake District farm, now living in Scotland, and is a specialist and mediator in farming family succession planning. So may I introduce Heather and hand over to her for our next presentation.
Thank you, Margaret. I'm delighted to be a part of this great seminar this evening. So yeah, Heather Wildman, a Cumbrian girl, born and bred, and I set up my own business, Saviour Associates, in 2014. And I initially was in staff recruitment, leadership, facilitating a lot of discussion groups. And I kind of accidentally got into succession because behind a lot of the issues that a lot of my clients were having was succession. So that took me in 2016. I went to Australia because it was seen as a country that was forward thinking in this, I think because of the remoteness, the extremities with drought and everything as well, and mass suicide as well. And I came back and I wrote a pack, The Saviour's Guide to Succession. And I guess I'm just going to talk you very quickly through some of my tips and advice on how to approach succession yourselves. And I think this is relevant regardless of your age, regardless if you have a business, haven't got a business, regardless of whether you've got successors or you haven't got successors. You know, if you're at the beginning of your career or you're into the twilight zone of your career as well. So whenever I start with any client, it is all about your vision. You know, what are you about? What is your dream? What's your motivator? What's your desires? What do you aspire to be? What legacy do you want to leave? And for some people, they find that very difficult to verbalize it. And I think farmers in particular are very good at grunting. but maybe not the best at actually articulating what they want. And a dream or a vision or a goal that is written down is 80% more likely to come true. So that is one of my first goal principles. Anything you want to do, get it written down. And then it's how do you verbalize it? You know, I want to transition the business. We're going to sell the business. I want the firstborn to have the business. I want someone to have the business and everyone else is to buy them out. None of you are going to get the business because it's going to the dog and cat home. And me and dad, we're going to run off into the twilight and spend all your inheritance and have a whale of a time. Whatever it is, it's absolutely fine. It's your right. But it's how do you have that communication? And I think that's the really key bit. So your vision and your dream and your goals, what do you want, what you aspire for, what do you want out of your life, how are you going to communicate it, and then who do you need with you? And I think now we're talking about all these incredible diverse businesses. You know, what is the skill set that we need to be able to transition these businesses on to the next generation? What is the knowledge, attitude, skills and habits that you need to be able to see before you feel confident in letting the next generation take over? Or if you are the incoming generation, what do you need to be learning, exhibiting and speaking to be able to step up into this new role? And for me, I think one thing I really noticed when I was traveling around looking at succession was you can absolutely tell when people love what they're doing. You know, when you truly believe in what you're doing, it shows and it pays. Winners in life are excited about where they're going. And, you know, Lynne and Emma, we definitely saw the passion and the desire and the care and the ownership of their products and everything. And I look at sometimes and I think, when do you see a happy farmer? And, you know, it's just not really their default setting. And I think some people are farming because they don't know what else to do. And, you know, that's what they said they had to do. And it's really what they want to do. And it worries me now going forward when we look at succession and we find agriculture one of the hardest positions to get staff and to get people to take in. And I think, is that because we give it a really bad reputation? You know, we're always moaning, we're always groaning, we always say there's no money, we're miserable, we don't take any time off, we work 24/7. You know, and would you work for you? And, you know, and I think businesses that are successful and that people love what they're doing, they spring out of bed in the morning. People want to work for those kind of people. So, you know, take charge. We only have one life. And I think that is one thing I'm definitely seeing through COVID. You know, people are really reflecting, what are they doing with their lives? And does it make you happy? And, you know, we spend such a vast amount of our time doing it, you know, it's a shame not to enjoy it. And I'm one of the lucky ones, you know, I've never worked a day in my life. I have the best job in the world. And I think sometimes having this meeting with your family can be the most daunting. And I'm from a Cumbrian family, and trust me, when you get that look from Agnes, you know, you take it no further. But sometimes you have to persevere a little bit. And, you know, an honesty meeting with your family it takes a bit of nerve, but, you know, don't assume someone else has your best interest at heart, and don't assume someone else is going to bring it up. So regardless whether you're the younger generation coming in or whether you're the exiting generation going out, you know, young people really struggle to start the conversation because often it means death. It might feel insensitive. It might feel like we're pushing somebody out. So we don't want to be rude or pushy, and we know it's uncomfortable. But the exiting, the elder generation, they often don't want to bring it up too soon with their children because they don't want them to feel pressured. They don't want them to feel that they have to come into the farm because they knew how hard it was. They know there's a lot of income maybe from it, and they don't want them to feel that pressure. And for me, the sooner you start these conversations, the better. And you cannot start them soon enough. So, you know, before there's a family fallout, before there's financial implications, before there's health implications as well, so we can be rational and we can have a bit of fun. And I think it's okay sort of saying, well, you know, where do you see yourself? What would you like to be doing? What makes you happy? What kind of income are you expecting? You know, what money will you need? Where do you think you're going to live? These are all really open questions, and you can have a bit of fun when there isn't a fallout. You know, what are you going to do when we die? You know, who's going to take over the business? And by doing that, then you can get over the hurdles. And the sooner you start, there's more time to plan, because it might be, oh God, all the kids want to come home. Well, I've never thought about that. Hang on, we haven't got the income to sustain that. But that is the beauty then of saying, well, look, if you want to come into the business, you need to bring an idea. You know, you could make puddings, you can put a breed of sheep on and allow the children to come in with an idea and a business plan, but you need to let them take over certain areas of responsibility as well. But I think if they own a concept, it's a great way, and they can develop it and take it forward. When to have the meetings, you know, often it can just be around the kitchen table. I had one young farmer, he says, Heather, the best time to speak to mum and dad is Sunday night about 7:30. He's had his roast beef and he's had a couple of cans of beer and he's a lot more mellow. Someone else said, Heather, the only way I can get this conversation is when we're in the vehicle and it's moving and the doors are locked and they can't get out and they can't avoid it. But whatever works for you, persist, but write it down as well. Because it's amazing how people forget, and then, you know, it all sort of rambles on, or someone's interpreted it differently to someone else. And because succession can be messy, and unfortunately all we really tend to hear about are the bad scenarios where things don't work out. Someone didn't get left the farm, or they thought they were getting left the farm and they've got to pay out everybody else. And you hear even worse, that some people actually, you know, they've paid siblings out more than once. There's some awful stories, or they've worked all their life and they've got nothing. And I think that's where, you know, it's knowing in your own mind whether you can work with your family. Because, you know, some of families, it's wonderful when you see them, the harmony, the respect, the trust, the nurturing, the caring is absolutely wonderful. And other family businesses you go in, it's toxic, but we daren't move in case we don't get the farm. But just think, you know, be careful what you wish for. You might get that farm and it might be the worst thing that ever happened to you. And it can be heartbreaking. And you see these people that then are in the 40s, 50s, 60s, older, and they don't know what else to do. And I think for me, a good way of handling succession as well is, if you've got young people in your family, encourage them to work elsewhere, encourage them to get out, work on other businesses, travel, learn new skills, see what it's like to be an employee. And actually, you haven't got an entitlement to succeed in this business. You know, there's the new generation that we've got now, there's this real entitlement of, well, I deserve it, it's mine, it's my destiny. Well, is it? You know, sometimes this new generation of, you know, a lot of farmers say, well, I started with nothing, you're going to start with nothing, and you need to earn your way forward, which I think can have a lot to be said for it as well. But, you know, for a family looking at succession and for businesses going forward, create a plan. Think big, think bold, be ambitious, take advice. That is one thing, you know, the professional network out there, there's some wonderful accountants, lawyers and solicitors, and there's some shockers as well. But take advice and take more advice. Keep control. If you're going to be doing this, whether you're, you know, the younger, the elder, you will not be popular. You will have to drive it. You'll have to put deadlines in place. And that is absolutely key. Whether it be your accountant, your lawyer, your consultants that you're working with, put deadlines, because a lot of folks say, oh, well, we talk about it, but we never actually do anything. So you will have to drive it. You'll have to check the paperwork. You'll have to dot the I's and cross the T's. And keep in touch with the family. I know some family members say we all got on fine until they left home, and often one sibling gets to hear everything 3 or 4 times, and the other one doesn't get to hear about it. So a family email can be quite good, a WhatsApp group, so it's all copied in. I've got some families that have a family summit once a year. I don't think they'll be doing it this year, but it was the first weekend in February. They used to go away for a weekend and they used to review their goals and see how they were doing, and then set the plans for the next 12 months, which I thought was an absolutely brilliant idea. Facilitators, I think the beauty of a facilitator is we look out the box. We're not in the family, we're not seeing all the bogged down. Sometimes we can just see all the things we can't do, not all the opportunities we've got available. So, and also a facilitator, it keeps it to time, it keeps everyone a bit more professional and polite, not always. And we ask the questions that need to be asked that we're maybe afraid of. Wills and power of attorney, how-to manual, you know, even if you only start in, you think you've got everything all sorted, what happens if one of the key members of your family doesn't come home, tragically? So wills, are they up to date? Where are they? And have you got the right executors and trustees in place, depending on the scale of your business? I think that is really key. Power of attorneys are as important, if not more. Who's going to run your business and make those decisions if you're not there, but also your health matters as well. And understanding your company and partnerships. And this is one thing when I've done succession workshops, how many of you listening are either a sole trader, a partner, and only one name is on the signature if you're a sole trader or on a tenancy, or if you're in a partnership, there's only 2 of you in the partnership. What happens if one of you doesn't make it or doesn't come home today? And is the partnership fit for purpose? Is it signed? Because, you know, what happens is you've got a sudden death and then your business is frozen. So really making sure, and if you are in a partnership, what you're a partner of, that really surprises me as well. You know, and do you know the figures? You know, a lot of people get brought into partnership and it's maybe in the movable, which is all the, you know, the stock, the machinery, but it's generally the debt as well, you know. So who's got the partnership or who's got the ownership of the land and the properties? But whenever we start with any succession, the first thing I do with my clients is where are we at? What's the debt? What's the borrowing? What assets have we got? What savings? What's pensions? Where are we at? And you know, what are we able to multiply with the business and diversify with? And how can we use it maybe more smarter? Because a lot of family farms, they've invested every single penny into the business. That's how we've got where we are. But then suddenly when the next generation's coming in, there's nothing left for mum and dad to come out with. So, you know, maybe look at the children buying the way into the business or paying other people out. There's just so many other ways, but you can't start until you know where you are, what the numbers are, and sitting down and thinking what everybody's aims and expectations are. And for me, it's that collaboration. Succession can be difficult. It can be hard, but if you've got the right people around you, it can be fairly straightforward. But be realistic, but get the best accountant. Doesn't have to be the biggest, doesn't have to be the most expensive, but it's someone that understands agriculture. And if you are diversified and you've got a complex business, that actually understands that side of things as well, because tax planning is important. But, you know, succession is just not about avoiding tax, which I think is what some people aspire to have on their gravestones. You know, with plenty of planning, you know, the tax can all be implemented, but you need to verbalize what your hopes, your dreams, your goals are to those professional people around you. They are not mind readers. And, you know, businesses that have got good people around them, they just flourish. So, you know, have you got drains or radiators in your life? And I'm conscious of time whizzing on. I'm more than happy to ask any questions. And yeah, I think for me, it is really about do what makes you happy. And if you're not do something about it, you need to take charge, you need to take control, but also a bit of self-reflection as well. You know, are you showing your best self if you're not hearing what you want to hear? I think there's a great way of time, tone and language. If you use the right timing, the right tone and the right language, it's amazing how difficult conversations can be worked through. Thank you.
Okay. Right, well, thank you for that, Heather. I'm sure that will have rung a few bells for quite a few of our participants, particularly references to the reflections during COVID. I'm sure that's rung quite a few bells. And what it might do is lead to some interesting conversations in the future. Whenever plans for the future are discussed, as Heather said, it's important to consider all the opportunities out there. And for some of those farmers, that might include available opportunities and schemes within the national parks. So our next speaker is Julia Raglanby, who is Executive Director of the Foundation for Common Land, a consultant to our own H&H Land and Estates. And she's also a professor in practice at the Centre for National Parks and Protected Areas. Julia has worked on common land and upland issues for over 25 years, can you believe? And her passion is to act as the bridge between farmers and others on environmental and agricultural issues. She is specialising as the interface and contested space between agricultural productivity and the provision of public benefits in national parks and protected areas. So Julia is going to talk to us about those opportunities, available opportunities and schemes within the national park, So welcome to Julia, and I'll hand over to you for our final presentation.
Thank you very much. That's excellent. Well, firstly, it's a huge delight to be here today, and thank you very much to the previous speakers and also to all the people who are listening in. It's really lovely to have you here today, and the theme for International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. So my ask for you is perhaps to challenge yourself, both thinking openly and perhaps after today, with all the brilliant speakers you heard before me, we'll be able to think about your businesses moving forward. And the one thing we do know, with no disrespect to the men who are listening in, that it's often the women who ask the difficult questions. They're those who are running the books and making sure the family is held together. So on that note, while talking, you know, this in a sense, looking at national parks, actually what I'm going to say is equally relevant to those people who are outside national parks, those in areas of outstanding natural beauty, and those like myself who farm in the Eden Valley and the space in between. So I'm had a brilliant 17 years working at H&H, and now I'm still enjoy doing consultancy there, but I'm really honoured have for the last year being a professor in practice at the University of Cumbria, which does some brilliant work, not very good at blowing its own trumpet, but really pleased that do realise you've got a great asset within the county of Cumbria for those who are here, and those who aren't are able to join our sessions virtually. So we can have the next slide, please. So I'm really today wanting just to challenge you a little bit about your approach to farm business planning. There are great opportunities going forward, but there are also enormous challenges. And I was rung up by The Economist recently, and they said, oh, you know, could you tell us a bit about, you know, post-Brexit planning, etc. And I said, well, I generally split farm businesses into 3 categories. So there are those who are going farming, and they see the opportunity to going forward to really to focus on their farming and their production activities. And at the moment, for some, this may seem really sensible. I hope you can see the slide here, which is live weight. This is old season lamb price, clearly not so much old season lamb available. But if we look, the black line at the top here is showing that lamb prices are way above the 5-year average here. Really, some people would say it's a 10-year high. And so there are opportunities within food. Luckily, people still want to eat, and they still want to eat lamb, which is great. But that's not the only thing available. And if you put all your eggs in one basket, you have to think, if I'm going farming, particularly on vulnerable soils, particularly in national parks, particularly where you may be farming a site of special scientific interest, you may want to look at a range of opportunities towards your business. So one group of people are going farming. Then there's another group of people who are sort of moving into what's often called the regenerative farming, looking very much focusing on their environmental assets. Now, there are lots of funny words that can be used around environmental and making the most of your environmental assets. You know, people talk about, I mean, we personally are at home are organic, farm organically in a pasture for life, but I realise that's not for everyone. But it's really about making the most of your assets. And this little image here is about an emerging shared vision for Kinneside Common in the west coast of Cumbria. And that's an area where commoners have been working together with a project I've been leading, looking at how can they make the most out of what's in their common. Not only the sheep, also maximising income from the peat bogs, looking at wildlife, great opportunities. But at the moment, what we're finding is that a very large number of people are falling into this 3rd category of business planning, which is called the ostrich. The difficulty about taking the ostrich approach is, as you can see, it's not actually very forward-looking, but it's a very natural reaction, particularly with the lack of information that's forthcoming from DEFRA at the moment. And I can completely understand why people take the ostrich approach, because you're really, really busy. And why look forward when you're not sure what you're looking at? So I'll come back. I'm going to go through a little bit perhaps of a depressing few graphs, then I'm going to come back to some really positive things you can look at, opportunities available. So looking at the next slide, please. So this is my sort of mind the gap. And anyone, if they take, decide to go down to London, I haven't used to go there 2 or 3 times a month. I haven't been there for a year now, not missing it a bit. But there is this thing, mind the gap. You get off the tube and you go, oh. So we're about to find mind the gap coming big time to farming. And the gap is this total lack of income, because we know that for farm businesses, for lowland and upland beef and sheep farms, their farm business income before they paid themselves, 96% of that is basic payment. So if you, by 2024, farm business, the basic payment scheme will be halved. That means your farm business income is halved. By 2028, there will be none there, and that means you will have no farm business income, assuming you don't make any changes. Now, these figures here are, I've done a bit of a model of this. Please note the red sign, these are projections, not DEFRA's figures. I have used DEFRA data and data from a farm business consultancy called Anderson's to do this. But we know that there will be changes. And of course, we don't know what the future is. The other thing to remember, there is an election in 2024, and we don't know if there will be any budget for agriculture. The current budget for agriculture for the UK is about 3 billion. That equates to 0.4% of the government spending. We're not much valued as farmers. But anyway, moving on to the next slide, please. So DEFRA, by mistake, a few months ago, sent out a document to about 60 people. About 5 hours later, they realized they shouldn't have sent it out. But anyway, governments do these things from time to time. Most leaks are nothing to do with, with sort of people being wicked. They're mostly due to incompetence. But anyway, I'm not putting any figures on this, but this is the pie that's going to be available in 2028 if the government's business case, this current government's business case, comes to fruition. Now, I don't know whether you can see the legend here, because I apologize, it's a little bit small, but the green is the biggest, obviously the biggest chunk of the pie, and that's ELM. For those who aren't aware, ELM is environmental land management. And this will equate in cash terms to effectively the same as basic payment at the moment. There won't be any basic payment at this time. So, and at the moment, farms are very dependent on that. We'll also have, a couple of 100 million for animal health and welfare. These are legacy schemes. So if you're currently in countryside stewardship, that may well still be running in 2028. But again, that's majority environmental payments. A bit on plant health, a bit on productivity, a bit on market support. That's making sure that some markets run well, bit on rural growth and technical assistance. Not sure exactly what that's going to be, but that's will be helping people run their farms better, perhaps, but there's Quango language. Anyway, the vast majority of the money is going to be going for environmental land management. So moving on to the next slide, please. Let's explore this a little bit better. Now I wrote this first thing this morning because I was trying to convey the information as simply as possible. And you'll just go, I've completely and utterly failed. But actually, that in a sense is what the impression I want you to have, because I want you to realize how complicated the next 8 years are going to be. And you need to think really, really carefully about the opportunities you're going to have and how you can make the most of them. I'm going to sort of pick out a few things here. So you might see these two bits in red. So basic payment will be 50% by 2024 and 0%. There won't be any in 2028. So it might be a good thing to think about how will my business flourish without basic payment. So if you were at the moment, you got your check in December and you may have spent it already, but if you think about, well, if I've still got 50% left, can I put that into a savings account and think about the future and manage till next December before my BPS comes? That's the sort of thinking that might help you plan your business going forward. For the next 3 years, we're expecting there to be some grant funding called Farming in Protected Landscapes. And this was put in the Agricultural Transition Plan, and there will be grants available for those in areas of outstanding natural beauty and national parks. Here in Cumbria, we have a lot. We have the North Pennines, we have the Lake District, we have the Solway, we have Morecambe Bay. There's quite a lot of areas of outstanding natural beauty and national parks. So that will be a grant. And this isn't really big money, but it's all about warming up your business, about thinking, how can I get my business in a really good shape to take advantage from the new payments? So environmental land management is all about the British public paying you to deliver public goods, those things you don't get paid for at the till or in the mart. So it's getting yourself business ready. And what I would say is that the best thing to do in the next 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 years is to really prepare yourself. Use your basic payment that you're currently getting to restructure your business going forward. In the day after tomorrow, we're expecting there to be an announcement about the national pilot on environmental land management. We thought there would be several thousand people maybe going into this, but the NFU conference, George Eustace said he was expecting hundreds. So this isn't going to be really critical at the moment. If you're probably better looking at the farming and protected landscapes, but a few people might want to enter the national pilot. What's really important at the moment, if you are in a higher level stewardship or a countryside stewardship, stay in it. Probably your best bet to stay in it, particularly if you can get an HLS rollover in the uplands. That tends to pay a little bit more, but it depends on your circumstances. A countryside stewardship in the uplands may give you up to 10 years funding. So, and then what we're all getting ready for, but we don't know the details of, is this thing called SFI 2022. So that's Sustainable Farming Incentive. And the government, they have sort of 3 components to the environmental land management, and SFI is one of those components. They used to be called tiers, and you might have heard about tiers, but apparently us in the farming industry weren't bright enough to distinguish between COVID tiers and ELM tiers, so they renamed them as components. But anyway, we know we're peasants, we know that, but anyway, they're all called components now. So here we have the Sustainable Farming Incentive. This scheme will go on for 3 years, a sort of interim scheme. And again, do look at that. It's going to be based on a series of standards, see how it can fit into your farming business. You should be able to have that even if you're an HLS as well. And then from 2025 onwards, we're going to be really into the new environmental land management. Conscious of time, perhaps we can have the next slide. I believe this is being recorded, so there will be opportunities to look at this again. I'm more than happy to make the slides available. So what can I do now to be prepared for the future? What are my opportunities? There's so much that we can all do right now. And it's really interesting coming after the succession talk, because Heather's, in a sense, what she was saying is almost exactly what I'm saying, but I'm not talking about success. In a sense, it's how do we just get ourselves through the next few years, but very, very similar messages. So here, probably the most important is discuss options with the family. Really important, you're coming together to a shared vision. Remember that picture I had of Kinnerside Common? There, the commoners were coming to a shared vision. Everyone needs to understand the finances. At home, we had a really sophisticated approach to our finances until a couple of years ago. We had this shoebox, and we would take the shoebox to Dodds, and then Dodds would sort it out. We've now moved from that approach, and we have Xero. And now, several times a week, I can log on, I can see how our business is doing. We still work closely with our accountants, but there are other accountancy firms available. Understanding your finance is absolutely critical. The government are relying on us all not going bankrupt by the fact that we will reduce costs. They've said they're expecting 48% of beef and sheep farms to lose money to effectively be unable to operate without BPS. But they say if half those farms reduce costs by 15%, those will survive. And if half the other 48%, they need to reduce cost by more than 15%. So it's really important, reducing costs, and that can increase productivity, using productivity in a very broad sense. That may be that doing less is more productive. So dialing down the pressure on your land and on your soils, reducing your costs may make more money, but everybody needs to look at their own farm individually. And absolutely critical is mapping our public goods. Do you know what public goods you've got? What are the assets you're going to be selling moving forward? We've all got masses of these. You're probably already producing them in spades. Make sure you know what they are. Make sure you've produced a really good map plan of them, whether you're using Field Margins, whether you're using Land App, whatever app you're using, make sure you know what's there. So it's making the most of your land, but most of our farms are family farms. And even if you have a different structure as a partnership or at home, we're actually a charity now, but whatever option you have, it's really critical the family as a whole move forward together. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Julia. I am sure that will have opened the eyes of quite a lot of people attending tonight to some of the opportunities and the threats that are out there. So thank you to all the speakers. I'm sure you'll agree that we've had 4 very diverse and fascinating presentations, and I know that we have got a number of questions that have actually just shot up now, so I will deal with those in turn. So this question, I guess, is probably to everyone. Can you advise on contacts for anyone to advise on diversification opportunities based on your land, area and skill set? Maybe that's one for you, Julia, perhaps, I'm not sure.
Well, I think there are loads of people out there, and it does depend very much on your particular type of farm. So I would go to several people. So I use quite a lot of forums as well. And I would recommend using a range of forums. So trusted advisors are really good when you know what you want. And speaking as a completely unbiased land agent, clearly they offer a service, but I also think a lot of peer-to-peer learning. So that's, really, I would say is really important, whether you go through maybe Farmer Network. I'm on a Pasture for Life forum as well. There are lots of good organizations out there. So it depends the type of farm you're running. You will be able to find people who can support you doing that. But the other really important thing is to find people who don't get out of your echo chamber. So on Twitter, I try and find people who are ahead of the game in what I'm doing, who are doing things a bit more in a much more challenging way than I'm doing, and really learn from them. And lots of people are really happy to communicate. I've learned so much by chatting on different forums and Twitter, etc.
Okay, I think that's probably answered that question. What I would say, if we don't answer the questions fully, or if people have more questions, please contact us and we will deal with them later. Another question, this is from Helen, and I'm imagining this is probably directed to Emma, and it says, has Brexit affected your exports?
Yes, hugely. The main issue that we've got, even though we've taken VAT off at source of purchase on the website, is that all the European countries are now having to struggle to charge VAT and a handling fee on every single parcel over 20 euros that's going into the country. To the point that I had a Belgian customer saying to me that they have sort of almost nightly reports on the news that all the post offices are stuffed full like it's Christmas. Because where we've been saying to everyone, oh, get ready, nobody else has really got ready. So a lot of my customers not only are getting charged VAT, which is fine, everyone expects to pay that, but the handling charge can range from 10 to 50 pounds. And you don't actually know, dependent on which country. So a parcel of mine takes 3 days to get to China, and I've had parcels between 3 and 4 months getting to Belgian customers. The other thing is that obviously for our exports, for doing the European shows, we normally use an agent just when we're going to Switzerland, because you're exporting out the EU into Switzerland, even though we drive. They've told me that they don't think that they will be able to help me do any sort of exportation paperwork before the end of August, because they're so inundated. So again, being told to find yourself a freight forwarder, it's a circular argument because they can't cope either. So we are trying to work with our customers, and we're looking at potentially paying the VAT here, which might mean that we need to get an Irish VAT number, or until July when it goes back to a one-stop shop again. But then that's only for up to 130 euros, and some of our orders are more than that. So it has been a real nightmare, and we have seen a huge drop-off in our European orders. And it's also quite distressing for some customers who suddenly, well, I think we're all finding, even if we're importing, I don't know, a pair of jeans or something, we've suddenly got an extra £20 added on, or whatever. So I think it's the uncertainty. People just do not know what they're going to end up paying. So it's, yes, it has really impacted us.
Okay, thank you. A complicated answer there, but I suppose it was a complicated question. There's two questions here that are sort of similar. One's from Tamsin, and I'm going to combine it with another one. And I think, again, these are probably directed to Lynne and Emma. And the question is, people that have diversified, how many failed ideas did you have? And what was the way you raised capital to start up growing your new plans? And combined with that is there support for people wanting to diversify?
I'll try and be brief. I didn't have lots of different ideas. I started quite small, really small, and I think my husband, everything's got to be a business strategy, a plan, where's it going? And I think one of the things that women can do, and maybe Lynne would back this up, is actually just starting something very small that doesn't take a lot of capital, and learning where your product sits and getting the feedback and making all your mistakes as reasonably small mistakes until you get some momentum. But Lynne obviously has got a lot bigger than I have.
But I think the thing we share in common is I started from the kitchen table. There was no capital investment. I had a Brown Mason's mixing bowl. I had a hand whisk, the domestic cooker that was already in the kitchen, and I didn't even buy my ingredients wholesale. I was going to the local supermarket and buying butter and sugar and eggs and flour and dates and whatever else. So there was absolutely zero capital requirement. I panicked when I had to buy a box of 1,000 foil containers to bake sticky toffee pudding in. I thought, I'll never ever make 1,000. Why can't I buy a small number? And that was my first wholesale packaging purchase. And roll on 15 years, and we're making in excess of 1,000 puddings a day. But at the beginning, when you're only making 6 or 12, you're thinking 1,000's going to last me far too long. And it wasn't the amount of money; it was the wastage. You know, this packaging is not going to get used. That was my thinking. So, with regards to capital startup, I would completely endorse what Emma's just said. We both started small, very cottage enterprises, and see, you make so many mistakes, and it's good to get those mistakes learned from before you progress. And so yes, we ended up in a 3,000 square foot industrial unit, and big walk-in fridges, freezers, cookers, forklift trucks and everything else. And we borrowed to do that, because sometimes you can get funding if there are grants are available, and sometimes there are no grants available. And by the time you can get a grant, it's thwarted your business that much. You can't wait. You've got to go at the right time, and opportunities come along, and you've got to decide, are you going to take it or are you not? And by getting a grant, sometimes that can just put the brakes on your business too much, and it'd be detrimental. So there may be a financial assistance with the way of grants and things at the moment, but it all depends on where you are, what you're doing. It's all very in localized areas, so it depends. Yeah, geographically, where are you at? What are you doing? Is it wool? Is it puddings? Is it bed and breakfast? You know, what is it that you want to diversify into? Is it goats on Zoom? And the other thing was what failed enterprises. Now that made me smile, because the one thing I'd considered before making puddings was soft furnishings. I'd previously been to Newton Rig and done a soft furnishings course when I set up home when I got married, and I wanted to make all my own, you know, curtains and cushion covers and everything else. And then from people that I knew, they'd approached me and said, Lynn, will you do me a pair of curtains and do this and do that? But it's absolutely not agreeable to have a set of curtains on your living room floor with all of your hems tucked in and boxes of pins everywhere with 2 toddlers. So we had to knock that on the head at the beginning, because as much as I love sewing, there's no way you can have, you know, pins and things like it wasn't going to work with the 2 young children. So it all depends on what your skill set is. And was it failed? No, it didn't fail. We just didn't start it because we knew it wasn't compatible with our family life.
Okay, thank you for that. This question's from Liz, and I'm probably going to direct this one to Heather, and it says, some fantastic speakers tonight. My question is, how important are female role models, and what can women do to support the next generation of female farmers and rural entrepreneurs?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really important. I know all the way through my life, I've had someone that I've aspired to be. That, you know, when I wanted to do something, because I've always just been, I left school at 15, didn't know what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, never went to college, university or anything. And it was young farmers, to be fair, that was my absolute springboard of disciplines, of public speaking, creativity, networking. And Anne Laird from Brampton Young Farmers was my role model. As I'm a bit of a waffler, as you can tell, and I get a bit excited and I don't always make sense, but there's a lot of enthusiasm behind me. And whenever we were doing public speaking and everything, I always used to think of Anne, and whenever I spoke, I pretended I was Anne. And I do that with my coaching with young farmers. You know, if you've got someone you aspire to be, you want to be, look like it, walk like it, talk it, live it, breathe it, associate yourself in those circles, get to know them. And what I find, the more I've risen in organizations and in businesses, you realize there's a lot of fakers out there, and a lot of people are winging it. And it's when you get into the business, and I started to think, so hang on, Heather, just think if you did know a little bit about what you're talking about, how good could you be? And I think that's the really thing, is look out there, look at who you want to be, ask them questions. And I think everyone on the panel have said, and you know, more women want to see other people win and succeed. And there's a lot of mentoring schemes out there available now. You know, get involved with them, but knock on the door and say, how did you do it? And if it wasn't, sometimes it's not the right person, but just keep knocking on doors. Don't take no for an answer. Is another, you know, for me. And if you do fall down the first time, pick yourself up, learn from it, and get going again. Because the most entrepreneurs, philanthropists that have succeeded have had more failings than you would ever know. You know, folk just see the success and the pinnacle at the top. They don't see all their struggles and the heartache and the challenges underneath.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure of the time on this session, whether we actually get stopped at 8:30, so maybe Nina can help me with that. We've got another couple of questions, and this one's for Julia. Have we lost the argument around food production being a public good? And that's from Robert.
Well, Robert, you probably know the answer to this better than me, but very good to hear from you. I think the key is that we all need food, but we do buy food in the shops. So the key is not that food isn't important. It's a question of where we get paid for it. And I think one of the troubles is that the price of food, as you know very well, doesn't represent the cost of producing it in a way that's environmentally sustainable and that provides a fair return to those who produce it. So this is the huge challenge, and particularly if we end up having to compete with imports from other countries. So I think Wales and Scotland are probably going to be taking a different approach to this. As people probably know, agriculture and environment are devolved matters. England seems to be governed by a more neoliberal economics approach. And at the moment, I would say there will be no payments for under ELM, there will be no payments for producing food. What we have been more successful is about soil. So there was a while where people weren't going to be paying for soil, but there certainly will be more payments for producing good quality, for ensuring soil is healthy, it's got high organic matter, that it can support the production of food. So I think we all need to surround, get as much sort of the payments for those things that are surrounding the production of food. But that's my perspective at the moment. Of course, it may change in a few years' time. Your people are always welcome to lobby the politicians and make sure that they get politicians who support their views on this in a few years' time.
Okay, thank you. I think that was all the questions. I think there may have been one question there that we might need to respond to later, which was from Megan, but my questions have actually disappeared. So I think that's all the questions we have for the time being. So if you do have any more further questions, or particularly if you want to give us any feedback on tonight's session, please contact us. We would really appreciate that. In today's changing world, hopefully we'll get to do this again, although I do have to say I would still always prefer to see real faces, but this is working in the current circumstances. So before I end tonight's session, can I just say thank you to all the people behind the scenes who made this work. Thank you to all the attendees for what I hope has been a worthwhile and enjoyable evening, but particularly thank you to our speakers who have given us information, opened our eyes, and made us think about planning for the future. I think the last 12 months has given us time to reflect on what has happened, but has also given us time to give thought towards a more forward-thinking future, which women will very much be a part of. My daughter shared a quote with me today about International Women's Day, and it was from Michelle Obama, which said, there is no limit to what we as women can achieve. So there's a high bar to go to. The tagline to this year's International Women's Day was "Choose to Challenge." And I'm sure you will agree that all of the speakers tonight have challenged our thinking and hopefully provided you with some food for thought. So thank you again to everybody involved, and as I say, hopefully we'll do this again in the future. So thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.